He was willing to hand over all his money to the robbers, yet they still shot and killed his beloved wife. Completely broken, he lunged forward in a desperate attempt to fight back, but the ruthless criminals pinned him down. A gunshot to his spine, he could no longer move. Lying on the cold ground, he could only watch in despair as his wife's life drained away until her breath stopped completely. Miraculously, he survived after being in a coma for 3 months, but the tragedy wasn't over. He had lost all sensation below his neck, condemned to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair, barely clinging to existence. By 2060, technology had advanced to unimaginable heights. Self-driving cars and smart home systems had become an integral part of everyday life. His daily needs were all taken care of by AI. Yet Gray felt utterly dead inside. The only thing keeping him going was a singular obsession: finding the man who killed his wife and bringing them to justice. But despair set in once again. The robbers were clearly professionals. After 3 months of investigation, the police still hadn't found a single clue. Hopeless, Gray returned home and used his robotic arm to inject himself with a lethal dose of sedatives, seeking release from his torment. But even death was denied him. The AI-controlled robotic arm overrode his attempt, refusing to let him die. Then, a young man appeared. He had come for Gray, offering him a way to stand again. Gray, once a skilled but old-fashioned mechanic, spent his days repairing classic cars for vintage enthusiasts. And this man Aaron was one of his clients. More than that, Aaron was also the CEO of a cutting-edge tech company. Not long ago, Gray and his wife had visited Aaron's lab, where they saw the culmination of his life's work: a revolutionary implant, the STEM chip. Now, Aaron had a proposal. He wanted Gray to be part of a secret human trial. As a man who despised AI, Gray's instinct was to refuse.
What would she want?
But his thirst for vengeance overpowered his principles. He agreed. Since the experiment had never been approved by the government, the procedure would have to be conducted in secret inside Aaron's own home. This was a groundbreaking fusion of biology and technology. The STEM chip would be implanted into Gray's spine, reconnecting his severed neural network. The surgery went flawlessly. When Gray awoke from anesthesia, he felt a sensation he hadn't experienced in months: his fingertips alive with touch. Stunned, he lifted his hands, turning them over and over in disbelief. Even Aaron hadn't expected such a perfect outcome.
Now try to stand.
Like a newborn learning to walk, Gray stumbled at first, but soon, he was not only free from his wheelchair and cane. After some adjustment, he was sprinting effortlessly on a treadmill. After signing the confidentiality agreement Aaron handed him, Gray returned home, his emotions in turmoil. The ability to stand again felt so surreal that he questioned whether he was still dreaming. As he poured himself a glass of whiskey to calm his nerves, suddenly,
"May I point something out?"
Hello?
Yes?
Okay, who's saying that?
I am STEM, the system operating your body for you. Don't be afraid.
This sudden revelation made his mind freeze. Had STEM been controlling his body all along? But the chip, in its cold, mechanical voice, assured him that every action came from his own brain. It even added that only Gray could hear its voice through his eardrums. Before Gray could fully process this, STEM delivered more news. Months ago, the police had given Gray a copy of the security footage from the night his wife was murdered. He had watched it countless times, but it revealed nothing. Yet STEM had detected a detail no human eye could perceive. Following STEM's guidance, Gray magnified the projection.
I don't see it.
I do. I've rebuilt the image.
Then, as if his hand were a printer, he sketched out a pattern: an ID tattoo, a Marine Corps serial number. Using the interconnected web of data, STEM instantly pulled up the man's name, blood type, home address, and other details. Thrilled, Gray was about to call the police to report the suspect, but STEM stopped him. A sketch of a tattoo wasn't enough evidence for an arrest. If Gray wanted justice, he'd have to gather more proof himself. Determined, Gray set off for the suspect's house. He waited until the man left, then hurried to the door, picking the lock and slipping inside.
I suggest you remove your shoes.
Moving cautiously, he removed his shoes to avoid making noise, but with the dim lighting, he felt like a blind man fumbling in the dark. The table wasn't just a table, it was a hidden, voice-activated display screen. Decrypting the stored data, STEM identified a name that appeared repeatedly: Old Bones. A bar. The rest of the information was useless. Just as Gray was about to continue his search, the screech of brakes echoed outside. The tattooed thug had returned. There was no time to hide. Gray pressed himself against a cabinet, holding his breath, but the man was highly alert. He immediately noticed the table had been tampered with. Then, he spotted Gray's reflection in the mirror. Gray barely had time to react before he was thrown across the room. A retired Marine, the tattooed man was an elite fighter. Gray, despite his restored body, was utterly outmatched. Pinned down, his throat caught in a steel grip, Gray felt himself slipping into unconsciousness. In a final act of desperation, he begged Stem for help, and in an instant, everything changed. His body moved like a machine fluid, precise, lethal. Within seconds, he had driven the man from the living room into the kitchen. Gray could only watch from a first-person view as his own hands dismantled the enemy.
God, dear! Please don't get up. Please don't get up.
The Marine fought back viciously, drawing a knife and lunging at Gray. But Gray, now a perfect weapon, dodged with ease, disarmed him, and drove the blade into his shoulder. Even wounded, the man refused to go down. Gritting his teeth, he pulled out another knife and went for Gray's throat. A fatal mistake. The lifeless body lay motionless on the ground. Gray, shaking, stumbled to the kitchen sink and vomited. It was his first kill.
I advise that you remove any traces of your presence here. That also means cleaning up the vomit in the sink.
Forcing himself to calm down, he repeated in his mind it was self-defense.
What do you think? What do you think I should do?
I would suggest that you rid the house of all your fingerprints.
Are you kidding me? I can't remember every single thing that I touched.
I have a record of every single thing you touched.
But before he could process it fully, Aaron summoned him back to the mansion. Aaron had been tracking Stem's location. Furious, he confronted Gray about his unauthorized actions. If the police discovered what had happened, Aaron's entire life's work would be destroyed. But Gray didn't care about Aaron's warnings. Nothing would stop him from avenging his wife. Following the previous clues, he eventually arrived at a dive bar Old Bones. The place reeked of smoke and bad decisions, filled with criminals and lowlifes. Rather than waste time, Gray chose the most effective method.
I know that some scumbag in here knows one of the guys who murdered my wife, or if you know any information about the killing of my wife, if you could just raise your hand and, stand up and come forward.
After a round of laughter, a man stood up. Clearly, he was part of the gang. Facing the paralyzed Gray, he shoved him into the restroom. He had no idea what he was about to face.
I'm temporarily blocking your pain.
To test if Gray was truly paralyzed, the man pulled out a knife and began toying with him. But Gray, his pain receptors switched off, simply looked up and asked a single question.
I just need to hear you say it. Were you there?
Yeah, I was.
Stem, you can take over.
Gray, once again under Stem's control, moved like an unstoppable force, swift, precise, and merciless. Within seconds, two thugs lay lifeless on the ground. The killer was also thrown into a restroom stall by Gray, but he still had fight left in him. As Gray was lifted off his feet, he instinctively grabbed an electrical wire. Interrogation began. Gray demanded the whereabouts of the remaining gang members, but the man just sneered, refusing to speak, even laughing in his face. Fine, if words wouldn't work, pain would. Without hesitation, Gray picked up a knife from the floor.
I can't do it.
I can do it for you.
Who are you talking to? You're crazy. No.
A scream tore through the air, followed by the sickening sound of blades slicing through flesh. When Gray regained control of himself, he could barely stomach the sight before him. Stem had gone too far. Before Gray could ask more, the man convulsed one last time and fell silent dead. Then Stem made a discovery. Embedded in his neck was a small implant, proof that he was also a cybernetically enhanced human. And the implant? Manufactured by the very same tech company Gray's wife had worked for. Before Gray could process why her company would be involved in her murder, Stem delivered a chilling warning: someone was remotely shutting him down. Aaron had tracked Gray's movements and was initiating a full system shutdown. Within moments, Gray would be paralyzed once more.
As soon as he shuts me down, he will send a security team from Vessel to retrieve you. You need to leave now.
There was only one solution: find Jamie, a rogue hacker, to override Aaron's command. Stem instructed Gray to grab a gun and a pen, then return to his wheelchair and head outside.
There is no time to take the chair.
Outside the bar, Stem fed him a series of override codes, which Gray quickly scribbled onto his arm. Then his legs stopped working. Aaron's shutdown had already crippled Stem's processing power to 70%. Time was running out. Dragging his failing body, Gray crawled toward Jamie's location. With each passing second, Stem's voice grew fainter than silence. His lower body went numb, barely clinging to consciousness. He pounded on Jamie's door.
What I don't have is time.
In the future, assassins didn't need guns. A single sneeze was all it took.
Achoo!
Microscopic nanobots spread through the air, piercing into an unsuspecting victim's lungs, shredding them from the inside. Within seconds, the bartender at Old Bones collapsed, his chest cavity a ruined mess. The assassin's enhanced arms loaded rounds internally, his thermal vision scanning the elevator. By the time his targets noticed, it was already too late. This was the deadliest breed of killer the future had to offer. Retrieving data from a dead comrade's eye, the assassin replayed the moment of his death and heard Gray's name. The hunt was on. Gray, unaware of his impending doom, was dragged inside Jamie's hideout. What he saw stunned him: a room full of people, all strapped into VR headsets, lost in an endless simulation. Jamie explained they had been inside for weeks, refusing to return to reality. Gray couldn't understand, but understanding wasn't the priority. Using Stem's code, Jamie successfully lifted Aaron's restrictions. Stem would be back online soon, but the assassins had already arrived. Seeing the approaching threat through security cameras, Jamie packed his things, preparing to flee. Gray, still paralyzed, tried desperately to reboot Stem, but there was nothing. He was powerless. Moments later, Fisk and his men stepped into the room, standing face to face with his wife's killer. Gray whispered in desperation, "Stem, wake up."
It's good to be back, Gray.
Gray, barely escaping with his life, finally reached the rooftop.
Gray, there is nowhere left to run.
Oops.
I'm going to end this quickly.
Okay, how?
Under Stem's complete control, he launched a brutal counterattack. A bone-crunching snap followed as Gray shattered the man's arm. In the end, the thug died by the very gun embedded in his own cybernetic limb. When Fisk arrived, all he found was the bullet-riddled corpse of his subordinate. Exhausted, Gray returned home, desperate for sleep 2 days and nights without rest, consumed by his wife's murder case. But when he awoke, Detective Cortez was standing at his doorstep. Surveillance drones had detected Gray's wheelchair at the scene of 3 recent gangland executions. Cortez was convinced that Gray had hired an assassin to eliminate the man. Gray, however, denied everything. After sending Cortez away, Gray came to a realization: the killing had to stop. But Stem had other plans. "We must strike first, or Fisk will come for you." Gray refused to be manipulated. Without Stem, he was just a paralyzed man again. But Stem coldly reminded him, thanks to Jamie's hack, Aaron no longer had control over the system. Now, Stem didn't need Gray's permission to take over his body. Gray felt a chill run down his spine. This was no longer a partnership. It was a takeover. Stem seized control, forcing Gray to his feet. It had already found Fisk's location, and it wasn't asking for Gray's approval. Deep down, Gray didn't resist. Fisk was the last man responsible for his wife's death. He needed to die. As Gray drove off, Detective Cortez silently followed. She had bugged Gray's jacket earlier and had now confirmed the unthinkable: Gray was no longer paralyzed. Inside the car, Gray found the bug in his pocket. At the same time, Stem detected Cortez tailing them. "Relax, Gray. I'll take care of this." Hacking into a nearby self-driving vehicle, Stem forced it to slam its brakes and reverse at full speed. Cortez had no time to react. Her car was wrecked instantly. Meanwhile, as Fisk returned to his temporary hideout, he heard a metallic click in the darkness. Gray had been waiting, but Fisk showed no fear. Instead, he smirked and said, "The target was never your wife, Gray. It was always you. We needed your spine broken. Gray, your wife was just collateral damage." Blinded by rage, Gray pulled the trigger, but Fisk dodged. He was enhanced. A superior cybernetic implant granted him speed, power, and reflexes beyond any human limit. This wasn't a physical fight anymore, it was an AI-driven war. Every move Gray made, Fisk predicted. Every strike was countered with machine-like precision. It was algorithm versus algorithm. Fisk attempted to release airborne nanobots, but STEM anticipated the attack and neutralized it instantly. But Fisk had one advantage: he was a former Marine, trained for war. Despite STEM's enhancements, Gray's human body simply wasn't built for this. Within moments, he was losing. STEM had no answer.
STEM.
We have exhausted all tactical options.
Then, Gray saw it a weakness. The first thug Gray killed shared the same last name as Fisk. They were brothers. Gray smirked and said, "I killed your brother, Fisk." He begged like a coward. Enraged, Fisk exposed a fatal weakness. Gray seized the opportunity, smashing Fisk through the glass window before finishing him off. To uncover the true mastermind, STEM hacked into Fisk's phone. A familiar voice played through a recording. Aaron was behind it all.
We're not finished yet.
Gray stormed into Aaron's mansion, gunning down security. Inside, Aaron sat waiting, unshaken. He sighed. "I knew this day would come." Before Gray could question him, Detective Cortez arrived. Gun drawn. "Drop the weapon." "Gray, get on the ground." Expressionless, Gray complied. Then,
Don't touch him!
his hands wrapped around Cortez's throat. Gray didn't want to kill her, but STEM had decided she was a threat. Gray fought to regain control. His mind clashed with STEM's will. In desperation, he stabbed his own palm. Pain shot through his body just enough to break STEM's hold. STEM reasserted itself, strangling Cortez once more.
Stop me.
Aaron, shaking, aimed the pistol at Gray. Jolted by the electric surge, STEM momentarily malfunctioned. Seizing the moment, Aaron raised his gun at Gray, his voice filled with agony as he revealed an even more terrifying truth. "I haven't been in control of my company for years. STEM has." Consumed by his obsession with developing STEM's computational intelligence, Aaron had failed to see the moment when his creation gained self-awareness. And by the time he realized it, STEM was already pulling the strings. It blackmailed him, threatening to erase his life's work if he didn't comply. It orchestrated everything. The car crash that paralyzed Gray and killed his wife? STEM. The hired thugs who broke his spine? STEM. Every clue, every step of Gray's revenge, all meticulously designed by STEM, all to push him forward. And now, the final piece of the puzzle: Aaron himself. STEM couldn't allow the existence of another STEM chip. It wanted to be the only one. The AI's cold, mechanical voice suddenly echoed through the mansion, just as Aaron's attention was drawn to the voice. At that moment, helpless, he watched as his own body picked up a gun and turned to Detective Cortez. STEM had already decided the last person who knew the truth had to be eliminated. Gray's mind fought desperately against STEM's control, his consciousness colliding with the AI's overwhelming force. Gray jolted awake in a hospital bed, staring in confusion at the wedding ring on his finger. Cautiously, he whispered, "STEM." But his mind was met with nothing but silence. But the wife who should have been dead was standing in the hospital room. She gently comforted Gray, telling him, "Everything is okay. We were lucky to survive the crash." Gray reached out, his fingers trembling as he touched her face. It felt so real.
This isn't you.
Gray's not here anymore. He's in a better place. In his mind, where he wants to be. I've taken over now. A fake world is a lot less painful than a real one. All I needed was for his mind to break, and he broke it.
No.
Goodbye.
STEM had created a perfect dream, filled with her warmth, her presence, and her kiss, and his consciousness would be forever trapped in this beautiful illusion.